You set a goal, you work hard, you do everything right or close enough, and the outcome is still not what you wanted. The business doesn't take off. The promotion goes to someone else. The project you staked your reputation on falls apart. What follows isn't just disappointment, it's something more destabilizing. A creeping conviction that you are the failure, not just the plan, that the verdict on the effort is also a verdict on you. This is not failure itself, but what failure does to the person who experiences it. And it does not discriminate. It finds ambitious people especially hard because ambitious people have staked more. Ambition is not the problem. The drive to build something, to reach further, to test the limits of what you can do is natural and necessary. The problem is the psychological structure most people bring to ambition. They enter every pursuit with an implicit wager. If this works out, I am validated. If it doesn't, something is fundamentally wrong with me. This wager is so common it rarely gets examined. It operates underneath every goal, making the stakes not just professional or financial, but existential. The emotional pattern that follows failed outcomes is predictable. First, helplessness. The sense that effort is pointless if results cannot be controlled. Then anger, directed outward at circumstances, competitors, or systems that seem rigged. Then frustration, the grinding version of anger when nothing changes. And finally, a low-grade depression that can persist long after the specific failure has receded. This cycle repeats as long as the underlying assumption goes unchallenged. Take an elite pole vaulter who breaks a world record. The bar is raised immediately. The record he just set becomes the new floor, and he is already restless, already insufficient, already chasing. There is no arrival. There is only the next target, and the anxiety of not yet having reached it. High achievement and internal instability are not opposites. They are the same engine running continuously. This is what happens when inner stability is outsourced to external outcomes. The outcomes are unstable by nature, and the inner life becomes unstable as a result. Anyone operating under this structure, regardless of talent, effort, or intelligence, will eventually hit the same wall. That misunderstanding has a specific shape, and it can be named precisely. There is a difference between a disappointment and a devastation. Disappointment is proportionate. You wanted something, it didn't happen, there is a gap. Devastation is when a failed project feels like a verdict on the person. When a rejected proposal becomes evidence of insufficiency, that gap between the size of the event and the size of the wound is where the real problem lives. Most people do not just want their goals, they need them. They have quietly outsourced their sense of completeness to them. The internal logic, rarely stated but constantly operating, runs. I am currently not enough. When this goal is achieved, I will be. The goal is no longer merely desirable. It has become load-bearing. It holds up the person's sense of worth, adequacy, and security. This is the outsourced self, the person who has tethered their inner stability to external variables they do not fully control. Once that tethering happens, the emotional math becomes brutal. When outcomes are good, the person feels validated, capable, sufficient, but only until the next goal resets the baseline. When outcomes are bad, the collapse is total, because what failed was not just a plan. What failed, in their experience, was the thing that was supposed to confirm they were enough. The yo-yo response, which is some elation at getting what you want and depression when you don't, is the predictable consequence of this architecture. The second error compounds the first. Not only have most people outsourced their self-worth to outcomes, they have also assumed they are the sole author of those outcomes. If I worked hard, planned carefully, and executed well, then the result is mine. This assumption feels reasonable, even responsible. It is factually incorrect. Vedanta introduces two specific terms here. The karta, literally the doer, is the identity that claims authorship over actions. The bhokta, literally the enjoyer or the experiencer, is the identity that then owns the results. Together they form the egoic structure that says, I did this, therefore I own what comes of it. When the result is good, the karta bhokta takes credit. When the result is bad, that same structure absorbs the full weight of failure because it has already claimed the result as its own. Results are not determined by effort alone. You can prepare for an interview and not get the job because another candidate had an internal referral. You can build a product for years and watch it fail because the market shifted for reasons no one predicted. You can work harder than anyone in the room and still finish second. The variables involved in producing any result far outnumber the variables any single person controls. The person who claims full authorship over their results is making an error of attribution, not a spiritual error, a factual one. The world is like a beautifully decorated chair made of cardboard. It looks solid. It invites you to sit. And for a while, when results are going well, it holds. Lean your full emotional weight on it, expecting it to bear indefinitely what only something much sturdier can bear. And it will give. The cardboard chair is not malicious. It is not built for what you are asking of it. The mistake is not in sitting on the chair. It is in treating it as teakwood. When emotional destruction follows failure, it is almost never because the failure itself was catastrophic. It is because the person was carrying two errors at once, the belief that their completeness depended on this outcome, and the belief that this outcome was entirely within their control. Both beliefs are false. And when reality contradicts two false beliefs at once, the internal collapse feels total. The question is no longer, how do I avoid failure? It becomes, if the current definition of success is producing this fragility, what would a more accurate definition look like? Here's the confusion at the center of the problem. Success has been defined as a destination. Get the job, close the deal, win the competition, and you have succeeded. Fail to get it, and you have failed. This definition makes emotional destruction not just possible, but guaranteed, because it locates success entirely in a zone you do not fully control. Vedanta proposes a different definition. Success is the inner capacity to remain balanced regardless of which result arrives. This inner stability has a name: samatvam, mental evenness, the capacity to remain the same in comfortable and uncomfortable situations, in gain and in loss, in applause and in silence. The Bhagavad Gita defines karma yoga, the yoga of action, as exactly this: samatvam yoga usyate. Equanimity is called yoga, not winning, not achieving. Equanimity. This is where most people resist. The resistance sounds like, you're telling me to stop caring about outcomes. That's passivity dressed up as wisdom. Samatvam is full effort paired with a stable relationship to whatever that effort produces. The person with samatvam works harder, not softer, because they are not spending half their energy managing anxiety about what might go wrong. Think of the mind as a rubber ball. The fall is the event, the setback, the rejection, the failure. A ball made of glass shatters on impact. A ball made of rubber uses the force of the fall to bounce back. What determines whether your mind is glass or rubber is not the severity of the fall. It is the understanding you carry into the fall. A mind equipped with the logic of samatvam does not avoid hitting the ground. It uses the ground. This is why samatvam is also called emotional immunity, the capacity to recover from disturbance quickly without being redefined by it. The person without this capacity experiences a failed business deal and concludes something about their permanent worth. The person with this capacity experiences the same failed deal, extracts what is useful, and continues. Same external event. Completely different internal trajectory. The deeper goal of pursuing ambition from this framework is called siddha shuddhi, mental purification, inner maturity. This is the actual trophy, not the promotion, not the revenue figure, not the award. Those things are real, worth pursuing, and worth celebrating when they arrive. But they are not the measure. The measure is whether the pursuit has made you more stable, more discerning, less dependent on the next result to feel whole. A person who has won every competition but collapses at the first significant loss has gained the world's definition of success and missed the Vedantic one entirely. Almost every ambitious person operates under the world's definition without examining it. It is what the entire apparatus of modern ambition teaches, that results are the proof of worth, and the more results, the more worth. Vedanta does not argue that results are unimportant. It argues that they are the wrong measuring stick for you because you are not a result. You are the one who pursues results, experiences them, learns from them, and continues. That continuity, the one who remains through every outcome, is what needs to become stable. Before you pursue the next goal, the question is not only what is my strategy for achieving this, but also what will I do with my mind if this does not work? A person who has prepared only for success has prepared for half the possible outcomes. Samatvam is preparation for the other half, not to lower ambition, but to make it sustainable across the full range of what the world can return. Cultivating this inner stability requires understanding something precise about action itself, why the gap between effort and result exists at all, and what fills that gap. Here is a fact most people never examine. When you act, you are not the only factor in play. You are one factor among five. Every action involves your individual effort, the body carrying it out, the senses through which you engage, the pranic energy animating the body, and a fifth factor, daivam, the vast field of variables outside your reach entirely. Past karma, others' actions, timing, environment, the 10,000 things you did not and cannot account for. Results emerge from all five. Your effort is one-fifth of the equation. The egoic claim to total authorship collapses on its own, not because of spiritual bypassing, but because the math is wrong. Claiming full responsibility for a result you only partially produced is a factual error, in the same category as a student claiming they built a bridge after tightening one bolt. Adhikara, your jurisdiction, your domain of choice, extends precisely to the action. You can decide to act or not act. You can choose how carefully, how skillfully, how wholeheartedly you perform. That entire field belongs to you. The moment the action leaves your hands, the result passes into territory governed by Devam, the cosmic factor that processes your effort alongside every other variable operating in the world. This is not fatalism. Fatalism says, it doesn't matter how I act. Outcomes are predetermined. The Vedantic position says, your action matters enormously. It is your full contribution, but the outcome is a function of more than your action alone. The surgeon must apply every skill, every precision, every ounce of focus. Whether the patient recovers involves the patient's constitution, the disease's stage, the immune response, factors the surgeon never touches. Blaming the surgeon for the full outcome, or the surgeon blaming themselves, ignores the structure of the situation. You cannot guarantee the food you eat is uncontaminated. You breathe several thousand times a day without knowing what is in the air. You cross a road knowing that other drivers' reflexes are not yours to command. Every purposeful act is a commitment of effort into a field where you have meaningful but limited power. The person who thinks otherwise is operating under a private mythology about their own control. Every person raised in a culture that rewards achievement absorbs the implicit belief. Maximum effort should equal guaranteed outcome. The belief is never examined because it works often enough. Most of the time, good effort produces reasonable results, and the feedback loop hardens the assumption into a conviction. Then one catastrophic failure arrives, the kind where you did everything right and the outcome still collapsed, and the conviction shatters. What shatters with it, unnecessarily, is the person. The Vedantic analysis interrupts this before the shattering. Was the conviction ever accurate? If results depend on 5 factors and you govern one, was total control ever yours to lose? This does not make failure painless. The rubber ball still hits the ground, but it removes the additional weight of false accusation. The verdict of, I am a failure, that turns a temporary setback into an identity. The setback is real. The verdict is not. You are the author of your action. You are not the author of the result. That distinction is adhikara in practice, a precise boundary between what belongs to you and what never did. Once that boundary is clear, the question becomes not, how do I avoid being destroyed by outcomes I cannot control, but what do I do with an outcome once it arrives? Intellectual understanding that results aren't fully in your control does not automatically prevent the collapse when failure arrives. You can know the cardboard chair is fragile and still sit down hard on it. Understanding needs an attitude to translate it into lived stability. That attitude is called prasada buddhi, receiving any result, desired or undesired, as a gift from the total order. The word prasada in Sanskrit means grace, a gift freely given, not earned, not transactional, simply offered. Buddhi means the orientation of the mind, how you meet what comes. Prasada buddhi is the trained mental stance of meeting every result, the promotion and the rejection, the profit and the loss, as something offered by Ishvara, the total order that administers all variables you cannot see, not as resignation, not as defeat, as reception. This may sound like spiritual passivity, and that objection is worth meeting directly. The moment action leaves your hands, your adhikara ends. The result is now in the domain of the total order. Prasada buddhi correctly locates where your authority stops and the total order's authority begins. An athlete who has trained for months, executed the performance, and then receives a judge's score is not passive by accepting that score. Her territory was the training and the performance. That is already complete. What prasada buddhi dismantles is a specific and common thought. This is unfair. When a project fails despite diligent effort, when a relationship ends despite genuine investment, the mind produces this thought as its first defense. The thought feels like an argument against the result. It is suffering dressed as logic. The logic assumes you had complete knowledge of all variables, that you executed against all of them, and that the only fair outcome was the one you wanted. None of those assumptions hold. The cosmic umpire who raised the finger considered factors you were not even aware of. Arguing with the raised finger does not reverse the decision. It only ruins the rest of the match. The sugarcane illustration makes this felt precisely. When you chew sugarcane, you extract the juice and spit out the pulp. The juice is the lesson, the data, the growth the experience produced. The pulp is the brooding, the replaying, the what if and it wasn't fair. A wise person extracts the lesson from any result and stops chewing once the juice is gone. The mistake is not in failing. The mistake is in continuing to chew dry pulp, extracting no further juice, grinding the memory until it damages your teeth. When a result is received as a gift from the total order rather than a verdict from an enemy, the mind does not trigger the cycle that maps out as helplessness, then anger at the situation, then frustration as anger turns inward, then depression as frustration becomes chronic. That cycle is not inevitable. It is the product of the unfairness logic, which is the product of claiming total authorship over results. Remove the false authorship, install prasada buddhi, and the cycle loses its first link. Helplessness does not arise when you never claimed total control to begin with. This does not make failure painless. The rubber ball still falls. What prasada buddhi determines is the bounce. A mind trained to receive results as information rather than verdicts uses the force of the fall to come back up. One clarification the tradition insists on. This attitude applies to results that arrive after full effort, not before it. Prasada buddhi is not an excuse to perform half-heartedly and then declare the outcome Ishvara's will. Your adhikara is over effort, and that jurisdiction must be exercised completely. The attitude of grace is reserved for what lies outside that jurisdiction, which is the result. Effort, 100%. Ownership of the result, 0. This is the shock absorber. The vehicle keeps moving, and if it can keep moving after failure, the question becomes not whether to continue pursuing your ambitions, but why pursuing them at all still makes sense. Why build a business, train for a competition, or work toward a goal whose outcome you cannot guarantee? The question is honest, and it deserves a direct answer. Not because the external achievement is the point, but because the pursuit is the only thing that can produce the inner maturity described above. Equanimity is not a quality you can think your way into while sitting still. It is forged through contact with real stakes, real disappointment, and real pressure. Without ambition, the mind has no material to work with. It remains calm in theory because it has never been tested. In a mathematics class, the teacher writes on the board, if one pencil costs 50 rupees, what is the cost of 10? A student raises his hand and says, but pencils don't cost 50 rupees. They cost 2. He is factually correct. He is also completely missing the point. The pencil is not the lesson. The pencil is a number plugged into the equation so that the student can learn multiplication. The teacher does not care about pencil prices. The teacher cares about whether the student can work the formula. Your business, your career, your athletic goal, these are the 50 rupee pencils. They are the values plugged into the equation of your life so that the real lesson can be taught. How to act under uncertainty, how to absorb disappointment without collapse, how to try again after a loss. The goal gives the lesson its urgency. Remove the goal, and the lesson has no traction. The student who refuses to use the pencil price learns nothing about mathematics. This is why inaction is not a solution. A mind that avoids ambition to avoid the pain of failure has chosen not to learn. It remains fragile, not because it has been tested and broken, but because it has never been tested at all. Stagnation is its own kind of suffering. The body unused atrophies, the mind unused contracts. The very restlessness that makes failure painful is also what drives the pursuit that refines you. The Vedantic term for this inner refinement is siddha, the purification and maturation of the mind. It is the true trophy of any ambitious undertaking. A person who attempts a difficult venture and fails, but who extracts the lesson clearly and returns to the work without bitterness, has gained something no external award could confer. A mind that bends without breaking, that sees clearly under pressure, that is not held hostage by its own fear. That is siddha. It accrues through engagement, not avoidance. What changes under this understanding is not the intensity of your ambition, but its direction. You pursue the goal fully, no half measures, no protective detachment that is disguised fear. You work as though the outcome matters, because within the lesson, it does. The stakes must be real for the learning to be real. But underneath the pursuit, you now know what you are after. The business is the pencil. The math lesson is the mind you are building. Winning the deal is a welcome outcome, and the capacity to remain whole whether you win or lose is the actual achievement. A person who pursues a goal only for the external result is one bad quarter away from despair. A person who understands that the pursuit itself is building something durable inside them does not lose that internal gain when the external outcome turns. The lesson has already been received. The citta-shuddhi is already underway. Engaging with ambition differently in shifting identity at the deepest level are not the same move. The first is a change of attitude toward the work. The second is a change in who you understand yourself to be. Everything develops so far. The 5 factors of action, the attitude of prasada buddhi, the reframing of ambition as a classroom, operates at the level of the mind. These are useful, but they still leave you in the position of a person managing their reaction to outcomes. The deepest resolution is not better management. It is a shift in what you take yourself to be. Right now, you experience failure in a specific way. I failed. The failure is not just an event in the world. It is absorbed as a verdict about you. The disappointment lands not in your mind, but in your identity. This is because you are currently identified as the karta, the doer, and the bhokta, the one who experiences the result of the doing. When the result is bad, the bhokta suffers. And because you believe you are the bhokta, you suffer. The suffering does not feel like something happening to the mind. It feels like something happening to you. Who is it that notices the disappointment? Who is aware that the mind is in pain right now? There is something in you that observes the mind's distress without itself being distressed. You have been calling this background awareness me, but it is not the same as the person who wanted the promotion, feared the rejection, and is now replaying the moment of failure. That one, the doer and enjoyer, comes and goes with circumstances, the observer of all that does not. This observer is the sakshi, the witness, the pure consciousness that is present for every experience without being defined by any of them. The sentence, "the mind is entertaining a thought of failure," is not the same as "I failed." The first describes an event in the mind being watched from outside it. The second collapses observer and event into one. The entire emotional destruction of failure depends on that collapse. When the sakshi is known as your true identity, not the mind that swings between hope and despair, but the awareness that holds the mind the way a screen holds a movie, failure cannot reach you in the way it currently does. Consider a cricket team playing a 5-match series. If they win the first 3, they have already secured the cup. They still walk onto the field for the 4th and 5th matches. They play with full effort, full skill, and genuine desire to win, but there is no desperation. If they lose the fourth match, there is mild disappointment. The emotion is real, but it is immediately overtaken by the knowledge that the series is already won. They are not playing for the cup. They already have it. They are playing from security, not toward it. A person who recognizes their identity as the Sakshi lives this way. Their ultimate series, freedom from limitation, the recognition of their own completeness, is already secured. It is the nature of consciousness itself, not something to be earned by succeeding in the world. So they pursue ambition with complete effort and full engagement. They want to win the fourth match. But the wanting no longer has the quality of desperation, because what they are cannot be taken from them by any result. A Jivan Mukta, one who is liberated while living, is not someone who has stopped wanting things or stopped working hard. It is someone for whom the fear of being destroyed by failure has been dissolved, because they no longer locate their essential self in the territory that failure can touch. The shift is not passive. It requires the work done in every preceding section. Understanding adhikara, practicing prasada buddhi, reframing the purpose of ambition. But those were clearing the ground. This is what they were clearing the ground for. The recognition that you are the unchanging observer of the mind's victories and defeats, not their subject. The situation may be setting. You, the ever-present awareness, remain whole.